promising candidates we've ever seen.
You understand me?
Yes, sir, Sergeant!
You can expect your emotional, physical, and mental strength.
It's going haywire.
You gotta be shitting.
Before you watch War Machine 2026 A Broken Bar, there are some shocking facts about this movie that most people completely missed, from hidden details to behind-the-scenes secrets. Today on Real Signal Studio, War Machine is a 2026 science fiction action movie directed by Patrick Hughes, who also helped produce and write the film. The movie stars Ellen Richardson, Dennis Quaid, Stephan James, Jai Courtney, Asa Morales, Kenan Lonsdale, and Daniel Webber. The film was first released in cinemas in Australia on February 12, 2026. After that, it became available to watch worldwide on Netflix on March 6. Most critics gave the movie positive reviews. Many people said it was a fun action film with the style of classic old-school action movies. However, some also mentioned that the story feels a bit familiar and follows a typical action movie formula. Even so, the movie still entertained audiences and earned about $29,156 at the worldwide box office. We're breaking down everything you need to know. In Afghanistan, a staff sergeant arrives to help his brother, whose convoy has broken down. His brother talks to him about applying to become Army Rangers, saying that they should try to join together. While they are talking, Taliban insurgents suddenly attack them. A violent fight begins, and in the chaos everyone is killed except the staff sergeant. During the attack, he also injures his knee. Even though he is badly hurt, he refuses to leave his brother behind. He lifts his brother, who is mortally wounded, and tries to carry him all the way back to the base. The journey is extremely difficult because of his injury and exhaustion. Before he can reach the base, he collapses and loses consciousness. When he finally wakes up in the hospital, he receives heartbreaking news that his brother had already died from his injuries. For his bravery during the attack and his attempt to save his brother, the army awards him the Silver Star. 2 years later, the sergeant decides to move forward and apply for RASP, the tough training program required to join the 75th Ranger Regiment. When he enters the program, he is given the candidate number 81. During the training, 81 performs extremely well. He proves that he is physically strong and highly skilled. However, even though he performs better than most recruits, he struggles to connect with the other candidates. He keeps his distance and avoids forming friendships. Because of his strong performance, the instructors suggest that he should take the role of team leader. Surprisingly, 81 refuses the position even though his record clearly shows he is capable. His behavior begins to worry the regiment leaders, especially Sergeant Major Sheridan and First Sergeant Torres. During one underwater training exercise, 81 almost allows himself to drown instead of swimming up for air. This incident makes the leaders question his mental condition and whether he is still struggling with PTSD after the traumatic events in Afghanistan. Sheridan and Torres speak to him seriously about his situation. They tell him that it might be better if he steps out of the program for a while so he can recover properly. However, 81 strongly refuses their suggestion. He insists that he wants to continue the training and finish what he started. After seeing his determination, Sheridan and Torres decide to allow him to continue. For the final training exercise, they assign him the role of team leader. The final exercise is designed as a simulated mission in a forest. The recruits must locate and destroy a classified aircraft that has supposedly crashed and also rescue its pilot. Around the same time, strange news reports begin to appear about an object in space that scientists believe might be an asteroid orbiting the planet. The reports say that the object may be breaking apart into several pieces. While the recruits are carrying out their mission in the forest, they suddenly witness a powerful explosion or blast high in the sky. This shockwave disrupts their communication systems and creates confusion among the team. As they continue searching, they eventually discover a strange object near a creek. Because of the mission briefing, The team believes this object must be the classified aircraft they were supposed to destroy. Following their orders, they place explosives around the object and detonate them. However, when the explosion clears, they are shocked to see that the object remains completely undamaged. Suddenly, the strange object begins to move and transforms into a large walking machine. The machine immediately starts attacking the recruits. The team tries to fight back, but during the exercise they are only carrying blank ammunition instead of real bullets, making them almost defenseless. During the violent attack, one of the recruits, known by the number 7, suffers a serious leg injury. His wound is so severe that he cannot walk, forcing the others to carry him while they try to escape. The attack is brutal and chaotic, and many members of the team are killed. After the destruction, only a few recruits remain alive. 81, 7, 15, 44, 109, and 23. The survivors soon realize something strange about the machine. Whenever it gets close, their compasses begin to spin and behave unpredictably because the machine affects magnetic fields. This strange effect becomes the only way they can sense when the machine is nearby. The remaining recruits manage to escape by moving down a river, hoping to put distance between themselves and the machine. Eventually, they reach the group of instructors who were supposed to act as the enemy force during the training exercise. However, when they arrive, they discover that the instructors have already been killed by the machine. Looking around the area, the team notices massive damage across the landscape. They see clear signs that something powerful crashed from a mountaintop and traveled down into the valley. From this evidence, they begin to suspect that the machine may not be human technology at all. Instead, they believe it could be something extraterrestrial. Hoping to reach safety, the group finds an armored personnel carrier, APC, and uses it to try to return to their base. Unfortunately, the machine begins chasing them again. During the escape, they finally find live ammunition and start shooting at the machine. But to their frustration, they quickly realize that the machine's armor is incredibly strong and the bullets cannot penetrate it. While the chase continues, 81 manages to slow the machine down by triggering a rock slide, temporarily trapping it under falling rocks. Despite this brief success, the APC is eventually destroyed during the battle. Most of the remaining recruits are killed in the explosion and chaos. In the end, only 81 and the injured recruit 7 survive. Later, 81 notices the machine sending a strange signal up into space. Realizing the danger is far greater than they thought, he carries 7 deeper into the forest to avoid detection. During this time, 7 reveals something personal. He actually knew 81's brother before he died. While observing the machine more carefully, 81 discovers that it has a ventilation system. This gives him an idea. He lowers the machine toward a nearby construction site where there are piles of rocks and debris. At the right moment, he manages to pour large amounts of rocks into the machine's ventilation system. The blockage causes the machine to overheat. Eventually, the intense heat causes it to explode and destroy itself. After the battle, 81 successfully returns to the base while carrying the injured 7. Once they arrive, Sheridan and Taboras explain the shocking truth. The object that scientists thought was an asteroid was not an asteroid at all. It was actually a massive army of machines traveling through space. Pieces of this army have now landed on Earth, and they have begun attacking locations all over the planet. When 81 explains how he managed to destroy the machine and reveals its weakness, the leaders finally recognize his value and determination. Because of his courage and leadership, he is officially accepted into the Ranger Regiment. He is then given a new mission to lead the next assault against the invading machines and help defend the planet from the growing threat. The narrative of War Machine begins in the harsh, unforgiving environment of Afghanistan during the ongoing conflict. An unnamed staff sergeant arrives on the scene to assist his brother's convoy, which has broken down amid the chaos of the region. His brother immediately tries to persuade him that they should both apply to become Army Rangers, emphasizing the elite status and the bond they could strengthen through such a shared challenge. This personal conversation is suddenly shattered by a brutal attack from Taliban insurgents, turning the moment of fraternal connection into a scene of absolute devastation. In the ensuing firefight, every member of the convoy except the staff sergeant is killed. He himself sustains a serious knee injury during the assault, Yet in a display of raw determination and sibling loyalty, he attempts to carry his mortally wounded brother back toward the safety of their base. Overwhelmed by pain, exhaustion, and loss of blood, the sergeant passes out before completing the journey. Upon regaining consciousness in a military hospital, he receives the devastating news that his brother has already succumbed to his injuries. Despite this personal tragedy, the sergeant is awarded the Silver Star for his heroic actions, a medal that symbolizes both his valor and the enduring weight of survivor's guilt that will define much of his subsequent path. This foundational sequence establishes the emotional core of the protagonist's arc, where the interplay of military duty and familial loss creates a character driven by unresolved trauma. The knee injury serves as a physical reminder of the event, one that will echo through his later training and battles. The Silver Star Award, while an official recognition of bravery, also underscores the film's examination of how individual heroism is often overshadowed by collective sacrifice in wartime. 2 years pass following this incident, during which the sergeant channels his grief into rigorous preparation. He enrolls in the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, known as RASP, aimed at joining the prestigious 75th Ranger Regiment. Assigned to candidate number 81, he demonstrates exceptional performance across the physically demanding exercises, consistently outperforming his peers in endurance, strength, and tactical proficiency. However, 81 remains emotionally detached, refusing to form bonds with his fellow recruits and declining opportunities to assume leadership roles despite his superior record. This isolation becomes particularly evident during an underwater training drill, where he allows himself to approach the brink of drowning, a moment that raises serious concerns among the regiment's leadership about his mental fitness. Sergeant Major Sheridan and First Sergeant Tavares confront 81 directly about these issues, attributing his behavior to untreated PTSD stemming from the Afghanistan ordeal. They urge him to step down from the program temporarily to focus on recovery, highlighting the risks of deploying someone in such a fragile psychological state. Yet 81 rejects this advice outright, insisting on his readiness and determination to continue. Impressed or perhaps resigned to his resolve, Sheridan and Tavares permit him to advance, assigning him the role of team leader for the program's culminating exercise. This final test involves a simulated mission set in a dense forest environment. The candidates must locate and destroy a classified aircraft while rescuing its pilot. The exercise is designed to replicate real-world Ranger operations, testing not only physical skills but also decision-making under pressure and unit cohesion. As preparations unfold, external reports begin circulating about a suspected asteroid orbiting the planet that appears to be fragmenting, a detail initially dismissed as astronomical curiosity but later revealed as a harbinger of far greater threats. The transition from control training to unforeseen catastrophe marks a pivotal shift in the film's tone, blending the grounded realism of military drills with an escalating science fiction element. During the execution of the forest mission, the team experiences an unexplained blast in the sky that disrupts all communications equipment. This anomaly leads them to discover a peculiar object near a creek, which they initially identify as the target classified aircraft. Following protocol, the recruits detonate explosives around it, expecting complete destruction. Instead, the object remains intact and undergoes a startling transformation, revealing itself as a formidable walking machine. The entity immediately begins attacking the team with lethal efficiency. Because the candidates are equipped only with blank rounds for the training scenario, they find themselves defenseless against the machine's onslaught. Chaos erupts as the recruits scatter, with 81 second in command. Candidate 7, suffering a severe leg wound that requires the others to carry him to safety. The survivors at this stage include the 81, 7, 15, 44, 109, and 23. A reduced group forced into desperate improvisation. The machine's presence introduces a technological mystery that disrupts conventional navigation tools, as it interferes with the magnetism of their compasses, creating a detectable proximity warning system that the team quickly learns to exploit. Fleeing downstream along the river, The survivors reach the position of the cadre members posing as the opposing force in the simulation, only to find them already eliminated by the same entity. Observing impact traces leading from a distant mountaintop down into the valley, the group deduces that the machine is not of earthly origin but rather extraterrestrial in nature. Their escape continues aboard an armored personnel carrier, or APC, toward the relative safety of the base. The machine pursues relentlessly, prompting the team to scavenge live ammunition from fallen cadre. Even with real firepower, however, the machine's armor proves impenetrable to conventional rounds. In a daring maneuver, 81 engineers a rock slide to temporarily subdue the pursuer, though the APC is ultimately destroyed in the process, claiming the lives of most remaining team members and leaving only 81 and 7 to press onward. As the pair seeks refuge in the surrounding forest, 7 discloses a personal connection, revealing that he had known 81's deceased brother. This revelation deepens the emotional stakes, reinforcing themes of inherited legacy and shared loss among soldiers. Spotting a ventilation system on the machine during a momentary observation, 81 formulates a strategy to exploit this apparent weakness. He lures the entity toward a nearby construction site, where he methodically pours rocks and debris into the ventilation shafts. The overload causes the machine to overheat internally, culminating in a catastrophic explosion that neutralizes the threat. With the immediate danger eliminated, 81 successfully escorts the injured 7 back to base. There, Sheridan and Taboras debrief the survivors and disclose the broader context. The suspected asteroid was in fact an invading army of similar machines that has initiated coordinated attacks across the entire planet. By revealing the ventilation vulnerability discovered during the encounter, 81 earns formal acceptance into the 75th Ranger Regiment. He is promptly assigned leadership of the next major assault against the extraterrestrial forces, positioning him as a key figure in humanity's emerging defense. This detailed progression from personal tragedy to global conflict forms the backbone of the film's 107-minute runtime, emphasizing rapid escalation and character-driven action. Each phase of the plot builds upon the last, with the Afghanistan prologue providing psychological motivation that resonates through the RASP trials and the forced confrontation. The extraterrestrial twist subverts expectations of a standard military training story, transforming it into a high-stakes battle for planetary survival. The machine's design and capabilities highlight contrasts between human resilience and advanced alien technology, particularly in sequences where blank rounds give way to live ammunition and improvised tactics like rock slides and ventilation sabotage. The survival of 81 and 7 underscores the importance of adaptability, while the global invasion reveal sets up larger implications for future storytelling. Turning to the ensemble cast that brings this narrative to life, Alan Ritchson embodies the central role of Staff Sergeant 81 with the portrayal that captures the character's evolution from isolated survivor to resolute leader. His physical presence suits the demanding Ranger training sequences, conveying both the physical toll of the knee injury and the mental strain of PTSD. Ritchson's performance anchors the film's action, particularly in the climactic moments of luring and defeating the machine through strategic thinking rather than brute force alone. Dennis Quaid steps into the authoritative shoes of Sergeant Major Sheridan, delivering a seasoned military figure whose initial skepticism toward 81's mental state gives way to respect and assignment of command. Quaid's presence lends gravitas to the debrief scenes, where the scale of the invasion is unveiled. Stephen James portrays Staff Sergeant 7, serving as both comrade and emotional anchor for 81. His character's leg injury and revelation about knowing 81's brother add layers of interpersonal depth to the survival track. Jai Courtney appears as SSG 81's brother in the opening Afghanistan sequence, his brief but impactful role establishing the fraternal bond and tragic catalyst that propels the entire story. Asim Morales plays First Sergeant Torres, acting as a counterpart to Sheridan in evaluating and ultimately supporting 81's progression through the program. Keenan Lonsdale takes on the part of Candidate 60, one of the recruits whose fate during the machine attack contributes to the thinning of the team. Daniel Weber portrays Candidate 57, another participant whose involvement in the early exercise highlights the group's initial camaraderie before the disaster. Blake Richardson is cast as 15, a survivor who assists in carrying the wounded and navigating the river escape. Jack Patton appears as 109, part of the core group that deduces the machine's extraterrestrial origins through impact analysis. Jacob Hahua plays 72, contributing to the training dynamics and early attack chaos. Alex King is featured as 44, among those who make it to the APC phase before the vehicle's destruction. Joshua Diaz takes the role of 96, whose participation emphasizes the diverse candidate pool undergoing RASP. James Beaufort, who also co-wrote the screenplay, portrays 23, a recruit integral to the Forest mission's later stages. Justin Wang appears as 111, adding to the ensemble of candidates facing the unexpected threat. Mac Tistro is cast as 38, another team member whose actions during the simulated-to-real transition underscore the shift in stakes. Heather Borage plays 122, one of the female candidates whose presence diversifies the Ranger program depiction. Victory Duck portrays 135, rounding out the recruit survivors with focused contributions to group survival tactics. Additional supporting performers include Jake Ryan as Cadre Alpha, Christopher Kirby as Cadre Bravo, Joey Vieira as Cadre Charlie, and Ditch Davy as Cadre Delta, each representing the experienced evaluators and simulated enemies who fall victim to the machine, heightening the sense of vulnerability. Patrick Hughes, the film's director, makes a cameo appearance as Master Sergeant Hughes, a subtle nod to his multifaceted involvement in the project. This extensive cast list reflects a deliberate mix of established stars and emerging talent, allowing for dynamic group interactions during the training and combat sequences. Each performer's character serves a specific narrative function, from providing emotional support and tactical assistance to illustrating the broader human cost of the invasion. The production of War Machine traces back to November 2021, when Patrick Hughes was hired to write and direct the science fiction action project at Lionsgate, with Alan Ritchson simultaneously cast in the lead role. This early commitment established a clear creative vision centered on blending military authenticity with speculative elements. By September 2024, the supporting cast expanded significantly with the additions of Dennis Quaid, Stephan James, Jai Courtney, Asa Morales, Kenan Lonsdale, and Daniel Weber. At the same time, Netflix acquired distribution rights from Lionsgate, shifting the film's path toward a hybrid theatrical and streaming release strategy. This transition allowed for broader global reach while preserving an initial limited theatrical window in specific markets. Hughes also took on co-producing duties, alongside Todd Lieberman and Alex Young, ensuring continuity from script development through to final execution. The screenplay credits Hughes alongside James Beaufort, with the story originating from Hughes's concept that evolved to incorporate both intimate character drama and large-scale invasion threats. Principal photography commenced on September 16, 2024, primarily in Victoria, Australia, and extended to Queenstown, New Zealand. These locations were selected to accommodate the demanding requirements of the forest exercise sequences, river escapes, and construction site climax, providing natural terrain that mirrored the rugged settings described in the script. Aaron Morton served as cinematographer, capturing the visceral action and atmospheric tension across both countries. The shoot wrapped on December 14, 2024, after an efficient production schedule that balanced intensive stunt work for the machine attacks with more dialogue-driven scenes involving Sheridan and Torres. Post-production focused on integrating practical effects for the walking machine with digital enhancements to depict its transformation and explosive defeat. Editing was handled by Andy Canny, who refined the pacing to maintain momentum from the Afghanistan prologue through the global revelation climax within the concise 107-minute runtime. Dmitry Golovko composed the original score, crafting musical themes that underscore the transition from military procedural to extraterrestrial thriller. His work enhances key moments, such as the underwater training near drowning, the compass interference sequences, and the ventilation sabotage finale, blending orchestral intensity with electronic undertones to evoke both human determination and alien menace. The production companies involved Lionsgate, Hidden Pictures, Huge Film, Range Media Partners, and Dean Greek Picturesque collaborated to realize a project that prioritizes practical locations and character-focused storytelling over excessive spectacle, resulting in a film that feels both grounded and expansive. The release strategy for War Machine employed a staggered approach designed to maximize audience engagement. It premiered theatrically in Australia on February 12, 2026. Capitalizing on local production ties and allowing for early word-of-mouth in a key market. This was followed by the Netflix debut on March 6, 2026, making the film available to international subscribers shortly thereafter. The limited theatrical run generated a worldwide box office of $29,156. Reflecting the strategic emphasis on streaming as the primary distribution channel rather than wide theatrical expansion. This performance aligns with their hybrid model increasingly common for action-oriented science fiction titles, where initial cinema exposure builds prestige before digital accessibility drives viewership. Critical response to the film has been generally positive, as evidenced by Rotten Tomatoes, where 69% of 45 critics' reviews registered as favorable. The consensus highlights War Machine as an entertaining, old-school throwback to classic action movies, praising its energetic pacing and practical stunt work despite acknowledging a somewhat formulaic storyline. Metacritic assigned a score of 54 out of 100 based on 11 critics, indicating mixed or average reception that nonetheless appreciates the film's commitment to character-driven military drama amid the sci-fi escalation. Reviewers frequently noted the effective subversion of training exercise expectations into a full-scale invasion narrative, along with strong ensemble performances that elevate familiar tropes. The portrayal of PTSD and Ranger's selection authenticity received particular commendation for adding emotional weight without slowing the action. Beyond the immediate release, discussions around potential sequels have generated significant interest. Both director Patrick Hughes and star Alan Ritchson have publicly indicated that extensive plans for future installments were developed concurrently with the first film. In comments reported following the release, Ritchson described the existence of tons of sequel material, informally referring to a follow-up as War Machines and characterizing it as something that is going to be sick. He emphasized that the creative team had mapped out a broader narrative arc for the character of 81, building directly from the planetary invasion setup established in the climax. Hughes corroborated this by confirming that he had sketched out multiple story directions while writing the original script, envisioning an expanded universe where the protagonist's leadership role evolves amid escalating threats from the Machine Army. While no official sequel has been greenlit as of the film's early reception period, the enthusiasm expressed by key figures suggests a clear pathway for continuation, contingent on audience response and streaming metrics. The open-ended conclusion, with 81 assigned to lead the next assault, naturally lends itself to serialized storytelling that could explore further weaknesses in the extraterrestrial technology, deeper Ranger Regiment operations, and the personal growth of surviving characters like Seven. Expanding further on the plot's structural elements reveals how the film masterfully layers its genre. The initial Afghanistan sequence, lasting just long enough to imprint lasting trauma, transitions seamlessly into the RASP program, where the candidate number system dehumanizes yet unifies the recruits. 81's refusal to bond or lead initially positions him as an anti-hero archetype, but his persistence through the near-drowning incident and subsequent assignment demonstrates growth that pays off during the machine encounter. The blast in the sky serves as the inciting incident for the sci-fi pivot, with the object's transformation delivering a visual and narrative shock that recontextualizes the entire exercise. Survival mechanics, such as the magnetic compass interference and river escape, add tactical tension reminiscent of survival thrillers, while the APC chase and rockslide sequence deliver set-piece spectacle without relying on over-the-top CGI. The ventilation exploit represents classic underdog ingenuity, turning a perceived flaw into decisive victory and providing 81 with the intelligence needed for regimental acceptance. Each supporting recruit's arc, though concise, contributes to the theme of collective sacrifice. Candidate 7's injury and backstory revelation transform him from subordinate to confidant, while numbers like 15, 44, and 109 embody the expendable yet essential nature of Ranger teams. The cadre member's elimination reinforces that even experienced personnel are vulnerable, heightening stakes for the protagonists. The global invasion disclosure reframes the story from isolated incident to apocalyptic event, leaving audiences with a sense of ongoing war that mirrors the Afghanistan origins but on a planetary scale. In terms of casting depth, Richardson's embodiment of ED1 extends beyond physicality to subtle expressions of grief during hospital scenes and quiet determination in leadership moments. Quaid's Sheridan evolves from stern evaluator to strategic ally, his dialogue conveying institutional wisdom. James's Seven provides relatable humanity, particularly in forced conversations that humanize the Ranger experience. Courtney's brief brother role, though limited to the prologue, resonates through flashbacks implied in 81's motivation. Morales' Taboras complements Quaid with cultural specificity and tactical insight. Lonsdale, Weber, and the numbered candidates collectively illustrate the diversity and intensity of modern special forces training, each contributing distinct reactions to the machine threat that range from panic to calculated retreat. Production logistics further illuminate the project's efficiency. The 2021 announcement paired Hughes' action pedigree with Richardson's rising profile, setting expectations for high-octane sequences. The 2024 cast expansion and Netflix acquisition reflected industry trends towards streaming originals with theatrical prestige. Filming across Victoria and Queenstown allowed for varied landscape as Australian outback for training realism and New Zealand terrain for forested mystery, while the 3-month shoot from September to December 2024 minimized delays. Modern cinematography likely emphasized practical lighting for night river scenes and daylight chases, enhancing immersion. Kenny's editing ensured tight transitions between emotional beats and explosive action, maintaining the 107-minute pace. Golovko's score, announced in early 2026, integrates seamlessly to amplify tension during compass malfunctions and the overheating climax. Release timing capitalized on early 2026 audience appetite for action blockbusters, with Australia's February theatrical window building anticipation before Netflix's March rollout expanded accessibility. The modest $29,156 box office reflects strategic focus rather than failure, prioritizing digital metrics post-theatrical. Critical scores underscore strengths in fun factor and throwback appeal, with the 69% Rotten Tomatoes tally indicating broad enjoyment among action enthusiasts despite formulaic elements noted in the 54 Metacritic average. Such reception positions the film as a solid entry in the sci-fi action genre, capable of sustaining franchise interest. Sequel potential gains traction from explicit comments by Richardson and Hughes. The tons of material suggests pre-planned arcs involving 81's command of larger operations against the machine army, potentially exploring new planetary fronts or internal regiment conflicts. Hughes' sketched-out vision implies multi-film continuity, where the ventilation weakness becomes a recurring tactical motif. Informal references to war machines hint at plural threats and escalated stakes, aligning with the first film's ending setup. Enthusiasm from both creator and star signals confidence in audience demand, making future installments a logical extension of the established world. The film's exploration of PTSD through 81's arc adds contemporary relevance, showing how past trauma informs present heroism without dominating the action. Brotherhood themes recur via the brothers' memory and Seven's connection, strengthening emotional investment. The extraterrestrial army revelation expands scope exponentially, transforming a personal story into a collective defense narrative. Training realism, drawn from RASP details like underwater drills and team leadership tests, grounds the sci-fi elements in authenticity. The machine's designed impenetrable armor offset by ventilation vulnerability creates satisfying payoff through ingenuity rather than firepower alone. Cast contributions extend to smaller roles that populate the RASP environment with authenticity. Richardson's 15 and King's 44 exemplify team support during carries and escapes. Patton's 109 aids deduction sequences, Hahua's 72, Diaz's 96, Beaufort's 23, Wang's 111, Tistro's 38, Borrage's 122, and Duck's 135 collectively represent the candidate cohort, their varied fates illustrating attrition rates in high-stakes scenarios. Cadre portrayals by Ryan, Kirby, Vieira, and Davey heightened the simulation to reality shift. Hughes's cameo as Master Sergeant Hughes adds meta-layering to the military hierarchy. Production milestones from 2021 hiring to 2024 filming reflect deliberate pacing that allowed script refinement and cast assembly. Netflix's involvement post-Lionsgate ensured wide distribution without compromising creative control. Locations in Australia and New Zealand provided cost-effective yet visually distinct backdrops for action set-pieces. Technical teams delivered efficient post-production, resulting in a polished final product ready for early 2026 release. Critical analysis often praises the balance of old-school action with modern genre blending, where formulaic training plots receive fresh sci-fi infusion. Positive reviews highlight performances and practical effects, while mixed scores note predictable beats offset by execution quality. Box office figures, though modest, complement the streaming model effectively. Sequel discussions emphasize mapped narratives that could delve into 81's leadership evolution and machine army countermeasures. Richardson's sick description and Hughes's arc sketches promise expansive storytelling potential built directly on the first film's foundation. The Afghanistan prologue's knee injury and Silver Star Award establish physical and emotional stakes carried throughout RASP trials and machine battles. Candidate 81's isolation evolves into command through demonstrated resilience. The forced exercises blast and transformation deliver genre-shifting impact. Survival group dynamics, compass mechanics, APC chase, and ventilation climax showcase escalating ingenuity. Global invasion disclosure cements 81's heroic status. Richardson's 81 drives the narrative through grief-fueled determination. Quaid's Sheridan provides institutional backbone. James's 7 adds personal connection. Courtney's brother role catalyzes motivation. Morales's Taboras enforces standards. Lonsdale's 60 and Weber's 57 populate early team scenes. Numbered candidates from 15 to 135 flesh out the recruit experience. Cadre and Hughes cameo enrich hierarchy. Development timeline, filming logistics, score integration, and release strategy demonstrate cohesive execution. Critical metrics and sequel teases indicate sustained franchise viability grounded in the established plot, cast, and production elements. Production, development and pre-production. The origins of War Machine trace back to November 2021, when Australian filmmaker Patrick Hughes was officially hired by Lionsgate to write and direct an action science fiction film. The announcement came alongside confirmation that Alan Richardson, best known even then for his imposing physical presence and a strong run of supporting roles, had been attached to the lead. The pairing of Hughes and Richardson was no accident. Hughes had spent much of the preceding decade working in the Hollywood action sphere, helming The Expendables 3 in 2014 and later The Hitman's Bodyguard in 2017 and its sequel The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard in 2021. These were big-budget, high-energy studio action films that showcased Hughes' ability to coordinate spectacle while managing large ensemble casts. His instincts were commercial and kinetic, and Lionsgate recognized in him the kind of filmmaker capable of delivering something that would land hard with mainstream audiences. What distinguished War Machine from those earlier projects from the outset, however, was its personal dimension. Hughes is Australian-born, and the film represented his first opportunity to shoot in his home country since Red Hill, his well-received 2010 feature debut that had announced him as a director of genuine craft and ambition. Red Hill was a lean, brutal neo-western set in the Australian bush, and it earned Hughes the attention that eventually drew him into the orbit of Hollywood studio productions. War Machine would bring him back to the Australian landscape after more than a decade of overseas filmmaking, and he approached that homecoming with evident enthusiasm. In interviews surrounding the film's release, he described the production as a passion project, not simply in the cliché copyright sense that actors and filmmakers often use the term, but in the more specific sense that it represented a return to a filmmaking environment he genuinely preferred. The script itself was co-written by Hughes alongside James Beaufort, a creative partner with whom Hughes had developed a close professional relationship. Beaufort is perhaps best known to international audiences for his association with The Raid, the celebrated 2011 Indonesian action film directed by Gareth Evans that had become a benchmark for visceral, choreographed action cinema. Beaufort and Hughes had been linked together as co-writers on a planned Hollywood remake of The Raid for Netflix, a project that remained in development at the time War Machine moved into production. The working relationships between the two men clearly suited Hughes, who found in Beaufort someone who understood the mechanics of action filmmaking at a granular level while also being capable of constructing genre narratives that mixed tones without losing momentum. War Machine was also the first production to emerge from Huge Film, a new production company established by Hughes and Beaufort together. The formation of Huge Film marked a significant professional development for both men. Rather than attaching themselves to existing production infrastructure as directors for hire, they were establishing a framework through which they could develop, produce, and direct their own material with a greater degree of creative autonomy. Huge Film entered into a collaborative arrangement with Greg McLean, another prominent Australian filmmaker whose career had been built around visceral genre cinema, most famously the Wolf Creek franchise. McLean's involvement brought additional industry credibility to the venture and underscored the film's identity as a product of a specifically Australian filmmaking sensibility, even as it operated within the conventions of big-budget Hollywood action science fiction. The years between 2021 and 2024 constituted an extended development and pre-production period during which the project was refined, financing was secured, and casting was assembled. This was not an unusually long development window by the standards of the contemporary film industry, particularly for a project of War Machine's scale, but it meant that the film had been gestating quietly for several years before any cameras rolled. During that period, the concept solidified around a high-concept genre premise: a team of elite military candidates, undergoing the final stages of the grueling United States Army Rangers selection program, encounters something far more dangerous than any training scenario: an extraterrestrial machine of unknown origin and devastating capability. The casting process reached its most visible phase in September 2024, when a significant round of announcements confirmed the full ensemble. Dennis Quaid joined the production as Army Sergeant Major Sheridan, bringing his considerable experience with authority figure roles to what was essentially a commanding officer, part of the kind he had played with distinction elsewhere, including in his portrayal of Deputy U.S. Marshal Sherilyn in the Paramount Plus series Lawman. Bass Reeves. Stephen James, known internationally for his work in Race and The Piano Lesson, was confirmed in a key role alongside Jai Courtney, the Australian actor whose prior association with franchise action cinema, including appearances in the Divergent series and the Suicide Squad, made him a natural fit for the film's ensemble. Asa Morales, whose career had included a significant role in Mission Impossible: A Dead Reckoning Part 1, took on the role of Army Officer Torres. Conan Lonsdale, another Australian actor with an established profile from the Flash television series and the Love, Simon film, also joined the cast, as did Daniel Webber, an Australian performer known for his work in The Punisher and Escape from Pretoria. The casting of Jai Courtney in the role of Seven, other character identified as Richardson's brother in the film's prologue, was particularly significant to the story's emotional architecture. The Afghanistan prologue that opens War Machine depends on the audience quickly registering a credible fraternal bond between two characters, and Courtney's screen presence alongside Richardson's gave that brief but crucial sequence the weight it needed to carry the rest of the narrative. The brother dynamic, with its associated themes of guilt, grief, and obligation, grounds what might otherwise be a purely mechanical alien survival thriller in something recognizably human. Hughes had spoken in interviews about his deliberate intention to give Richardson's character an emotional core that extended beyond physical capability, and the casting choices made in September 2024 were oriented toward realizing that intention. Simultaneously with the cast announcements, a significant business development reshaped the film's commercial trajectory. Netflix acquired the distribution rights from Lionsgate. This was not a straightforward transition but rather a reflection of broader shifts in how major action films reach audiences in the streaming era. Lionsgate had originated the project and remained a production partner, but Netflix's acquisition of distribution rights meant the film would debut on streaming rather than pursuing a wide theatrical release in the United States. The deal positioned War Machine as a global Netflix original, which would carry certain implications for how it was marketed and measured. Streaming view counts rather than traditional box office receipts would become the primary yardstick of the film's commercial success. The arrangement also provided War Machine with Netflix's global marketing infrastructure and promotional platform, advantages that would prove consequential when the film finally reached audiences. Producers assembled for the project represented a blend of Hollywood experience and Australian industry clout. Todd Lieberman, whose producing credits included Wonder and The Fighter, joined alongside Alexander Young of Hidden Pictures, a production entity with the proven record of commercially successful genre fare, including Shotgun Wedding. Rich Cook of Range Media Partners rounded out the core producing team. Valerie Blatt-Sharp, whose credits included The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, served as executive producer. Scott O'Brien was the key executive at Lionsgate who had championed the project from within the studio. Together, this producing apparatus gave War Machine a well-resourced infrastructure and represented a genuinely collaborative effort between Australian and American filmmaking communities. Filming principal photography on War Machine commenced on September 16, 2024, in Victoria, the southeastern Australian state whose diverse landscapes and well-developed screen production infrastructure had made it an increasingly popular destination for international productions. The film's cinematographer was Aaron Morton, a New Zealand-born director of photography whose credits included several Netflix original productions. Morton's approach to the visual language of War Machine was oriented toward a gritty, tactile aesthetic that prioritized location texture over studio gloss, an approach that aligned with Hughes' stated intention to build the film around practical environments and physical action rather than relying excessively on digital augmentation. The production's Victorian locations were diverse and strategically selected. A significant portion of the military training sequences and the sequences that constitute the film's first act were filmed at RAF Base Williams in Laverton, an active Royal Australian Air Force base situated near Melbourne. The base served as the fictional Army Rangers selection facility at the centre of the narrative, and its genuine military infrastructure lent an authenticity to those sequences that a purpose-built film set would have been hard-pressed to replicate. The logistical challenge of filming on an active military installation was considerable, but the production team's ability to manage those challenges was itself a testament to the organizational capacity that Hughes had marshaled for the project. Interior scenes and studio-based work were completed at Docklands Studios Melbourne, one of the largest and most technically sophisticated film production facilities in Australia. Docklands had hosted numerous major international productions over the years and offered the kind of controlled environment necessary for the film's more technically complex sequences, particularly those involving the alien machine itself and the various special effects surrounding its interactions with the cast. The studio's facilities allowed the production team to construct practical sets, coordinate visual effects work, and handle post-production preparation in proximity to the location shooting that was occurring simultaneously. Outside Melbourne, the production moved into Victoria's High Country, a mountainous and heavily forested region northeast of the city that provided the wild, remote landscapes central to the film's survival thriller narrative. The towns of Bright and Myrtleford served as key filming areas within this region. Bright, a popular tourist destination roughly 3 hours from Melbourne via the Hume Freeway and Great Alpine Road, sits within an alpine valley characterized by dramatic scenery that shifts character across seasons. During the filming period which spanned the early Australian spring and extended into summer, other regions' terrain offered exactly the kind of rugged, inhospitable environment that the script demanded: dense forest, rocky riverbeds, steep mountain gradients, and open grassland that made the characters' desperate attempts at navigation feel genuinely treacherous. The physical demands placed on the cast during the Victorian location shoot were substantial. Alan Ritchson, whose preparation for the role had involved intensive physical training commensurate with the character he was portraying, later described the shoot as the most demanding of his career. The combination of altitude, weather variability, and the physical requirements of the action sequences, many of which involved water, mud, and prolonged exertion in challenging terrain, tested the entire cast and crew. Richardson's comments and subsequent interviews reflected genuine admiration for the Australian crews working on the production, whom he credited with extraordinary professionalism and resilience in conditions that would have tested the resolve of less experienced practitioners. From Victoria, production moved to New Zealand's South Island for the final phase of location filming. The Queenstown region, widely regarded as one of the most cinematically spectacular landscapes in the Southern Hemisphere, provided the dramatic mountain and river environments required for several of the film's most kinetic sequences. Queenstown itself is a resort town built on the shores of Lake Wakaipu, surrounded by the steep peaks of the Remarkables mountain range, and its surrounding territory encompasses some of the most visually striking and physically demanding terrain in the Pacific region. The film's production also utilized areas near Wanaka and Alexandra, two other South Island settlements whose varied topography supplemented what Queenstown offered. Among the most memorable specific locations used during the New Zealand phase of filming was the Kawartha River, particularly the stretch near the Lower Roaring Meg Power Station in the Kawartha Gorge. This location was the setting for a zipline sequence conducted over rushing water and rocky terrain, a sequence that reviewers and viewers alike identified as one of the film's practical highlights. The Kawartha River is already famous in adventure tourism circles as the site of the world's first commercial bungee jump, and its association with extreme physical endeavor made it a fitting backdrop for a sequence that pushed the cast and stunt performers to their physical limits. Visual effects work subsequently enhanced the natural environment, adding dramatic waterfall imagery that amplified the inherent danger of the sequence's setting. Additional water-based scenes were captured in a stream between Kingston and Fairlight, south of Queenstown, and around the Chinese Dogleg Rapid, a particularly challenging section of the Kawartha River known for its powerful currents. The selection of these specific locations reflected a filmmaking philosophy that Hughes articulated explicitly in promotional interviews. The production had made a deliberate choice to use real-world environments rather than retreating to the easier option of constructed sets or extensive digital replacement. That choice carried tangible consequences in terms of shooting difficulty but paid dividends in the physical authenticity that critics and audiences responded to positively. The New Zealand line producer was Melanie Turner, whose local industry knowledge was essential in navigating the logistical complexities of filming across multiple challenging locations in a relatively compressed timeframe. The international co-production arrangement between Australian and New Zealand jurisdictions added administrative complexity to the production but also opened access to both countries' screen production incentive programs, which contributed meaningfully to the film's financial viability. The cinematographer Aaron Morton worked closely with Hughes to establish a visual grammar that could accommodate the film's tonal shifts, from the grim realism of its military training sequences through the horror-adjacent tension of the alien machine's first appearances and finally to the full-scale action spectacle of the climax. Morton's previous experience with demanding location shoots, combined with his familiarity with the distinctive qualities of Australian and New Zealand light, informed a visual approach that was simultaneously rugged and composed. The film's color palette leaned toward naturalistic greens, grays, and earth tones during the training sequences before gradually incorporating the ominous red and blue energy signatures associated with the alien machine as the narrative escalated. Principal photography wrapped on December 14, 2024, completing a shoot that had extended across approximately 13 weeks of filming spread between Victoria, Australia and the South Island of New Zealand. The compressed nature of the schedule and intensive location work in multiple countries across a single southern hemisphere spring and summer required exceptional coordination from the production team and placed consistent physical and logistical demands on everyone involved. That the shoot came in on schedule was itself a significant achievement given the ambition and scope of what had been attempted. Post-production following the wrap of principal photography in December 2024. The film entered post-production under the editorship of Andy Canny. The editing process for a film of War Machine's complexity, one that combines location-based practical action with computer-generated visual effects, requires careful tonal management across its genre transitions, and depends on maintaining audience investment in a protagonist who speaks relatively little. Is never straightforward. Canny's task was to shape the raw footage into a film that honored the rhythmic logic of the action genre while sustaining the emotional through line that Hughes had deliberately embedded in Richardson's performance. The film's final running time of 1 hour and 46 minutes reflects editorial decisions oriented toward pace over elaboration. Hughes had spoken publicly about wanting War Machine to feel like the lean, propulsive action films of the 1980s and 1990s, films that trusted their audience to engage viscerally without requiring extended exposition or character backstory. This philosophy influenced the editing approach. Sequences were cut for maximum kinetic impact, quieter character moments were kept brief, and the overall structure moved from the film's prologue through its training sequences and into its salient survival narrative without significant pause. The decision not to linger or over-explain was itself a creative choice, one that some reviewers would later identify as a limitation. The characters remain underdeveloped, while others embraced it as a deliberate and effective structural strategy. Visual effects work was handled by a combination of Australian and international VFX companies. Victorian screen technology companies Framestore, Kojo, Fin, and XM2 played pivotal roles in the film's effects pipeline, alongside contributions from other facilities. The alien machine at the center of the narrative, described by various reviewers as resembling a massive bipedal robot with asymmetrical design features, glowing energy signatures in red and blue, and devastating long-range weaponry, required substantial digital construction. The challenge for the VFX team was to design and animate an entity that felt genuinely threatening and physically imposing rather than generic or weightless. Reviews of the finished film suggested the team had largely succeeded. The machine's full reveal was consistently cited as one of the film's more effective moments, with its scale and design generating genuine unease in viewers. A key philosophy governing the visual effects work was the integration of practical effects and practical stunts with digital augmentation rather than wholesale replacement of the physical world with computer-generated imagery. Hughes had spoken about this approach as a deliberate aesthetic and ethical commitment. The film would look the way it did because real people had done real things in real places, and the visual effects would serve to enhance and extend those practical foundations rather than substitute for them. This approach was notably consistent with the production's broader commitment to location authenticity, and it manifested in the film's action sequences as a tactile quality, a sense of weight and consequence that purely digital action tends to lack. The production designer was Anzo Iacono, whose work encompassed the design and construction of the practical military environments, the interior sets built at Docklands Studios Melbourne, and the visual consistency between location shot footage and studio-created spaces. Costume design was handled by Cappy Ireland, who faced the particular challenge of costuming a cast of military characters whose training and operational equipment needed to look authentic without becoming distractingly pedantic. Casting directors Diana Brigitte, Andrea Bunker, and Amanda Mitchell had assembled the ensemble that would populate those environments, with a deliberate emphasis on Australian talent supplementing the international leads. The post-production period extended from December 2024 through early 2026, with the film cleared for its Australian theatrical release and Netflix debut in the first quarter of 2026. During this period, the marketing apparatus began to assemble around the film, with Netflix's global promotional infrastructure kicking into gear as the release dates approached. On February 3, 2026, Alan Ritchson released a series of first-look images on social media, teasing an imminent trailer and describing the film with evident excitement. The official trailer released in the weeks following generated substantial online engagement, with the film's premise a Ritchson against an alien war machine in the wilderness landing effectively with audiences who had developed strong affection for him through the Reacher series on Amazon Prime Video. Music. The score for War Machine was composed by Dmitry Golovko, an Australian composer whose career to that point had encompassed a body of work spanning both film and television across Australian and international productions. Golovko's previous credits included Miss Fisher's Mad and Murder Mysteries, the Australian television series whose music had demonstrated his versatility across light to dramatic material. The Gloaming, the atmospheric crime drama set in Tasmania that had showcased his ability to build sustained musical tension across episodic storytelling. And Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism, an Australian supernatural thriller whose score had required him to navigate the intersection of horror and religious dread. His selection for War Machine reflected a deliberate choice to work with the composer who understood the specific textures of Australian genre filmmaking rather than defaulting to an established Hollywood action film composer. The War Machine score operates in the tradition of the large-scale orchestral action scores associated with the science fiction and military action genres, but with distinctive elements that reflect Golovko's own compositional sensibility. Critics and reviewers who engaged specifically with the musical dimension of the film noted that the score performed its functional role building tension during the machine's first appearances, amplifying the action sequences, providing emotional texture in quieter moments with professional competence while occasionally rising above functional adequacy into genuine effectiveness. One reviewer described the score as thumping along like a Predator homage, a characterization that captured both the score's genre awareness and its willingness to wear its influences openly. The comparison to John McTiernan's 1987 Predator, which loomed large in critical discussions of War Machine generally, was as relevant to the film's music as to its visual language and narrative structure. Alan Silvestri's score for the original Predator had established the template for military science fiction scoring, a driving percussion, brass-heavy action motifs, an undercurrent of dread beneath the surface adrenaline that subsequent films in the genre had variously imitated, riffed on, or tried to transcend. Golovko's score for War Machine sat comfortably within that tradition while incorporating contemporary production approaches, including hybrid orchestral electronic elements that anchored the film in the present even as its narrative and tonal sensibility deliberately evoked an earlier era of genre filmmaking. The soundtrack album was released by Netflix Music simultaneously with the film's streaming debut on March 6, 2026. The album comprised 26 tracks with a total running time of approximately 79 minutes, a substantial body of musical material that covered the full arc of the film's narrative from its Afghanistan prologue through the training sequences and the alien encounter. The album was released in a higher-resolution digital format and made available across all major digital music streaming and download platforms, including Apple Music, Amazon Music, and others. Netflix Music's distribution infrastructure ensured global availability from the date of release. The score received specific mention in several positive reviews of the film, with the combination of Golovko's music, Aaron Morton's cinematography, and Andy Canny's editing identified as the functional trio that carried War Machine's action sequences to their greatest effectiveness. One review noted that the cinematography of the action sequences, combined with quick cuts building adrenaline from the editing, and Golovko's score added meaningfully to the overall experience. This kind of praise is functional, craft-oriented, acknowledging the score's contribution to ensemble filmmaking rather than isolating it as a standalone artistic achievement, was consistent with the general understanding of film music as an element of integrated cinematic experience rather than separable art. Released theatrical, War Machine received a limited theatrical release in Australia on February 12, 2026. The Australian Classification Board had rated the film ME15+, a classification reserved for material that is strong in impact and suitable only for mature audiences, reflecting the film's significant violence, its graphic depiction of combat casualties, and its R-rated content that included burnt and dismembered bodies. The February 12 date gave Australian audiences approximately 3.5 weeks of exclusive theatrical access before the film's global streaming debut, a window that functioned both as a reward for the domestic market that had hosted the production and as a controlled pre-release period during which early word of mouth could build ahead of the Netflix launch. The theatrical release was distributed in Australia by Roadshow Films, one of the country's major theatrical distributors and a company with a long history of handling international productions that had filmed domestically. The theatrical run was accompanied by promotional activity that emphasized the film's Australian production credentials alongside its Hollywood-scale action ambitions. Director Patrick Hughes was prominent in Australian press coverage, framing the production's return to Australian filmmaking as both a personal homecoming and a demonstration of the country's capacity to host major international productions. His characterization of the Victorian crew as among the best in the world was part of a broader promotional narrative that positioned War Machine as evidence of the Australian film industry's global competitiveness. The theatrical window generated modest box office revenue as the film ultimately grossed $29,156 at the worldwide box office, a figure that reflected its extremely limited theatrical reach rather than any judgment about its commercial viability. The small theatrical gross was entirely consistent with the film's business model, which had been structured around the Netflix acquisition of global streaming rights from the outset. The theatrical release in Australia was always intended as a prestige platform and a marketing tool rather than a significant revenue source. In that context, the box office number is best understood as an artifact of the film's release strategy rather than a measure of audience interest or commercial performance. The decision to pursue even a limited theatrical release in Australia rather than proceeding directly to streaming globally is worth examining briefly. Netflix had increasingly explored hybrid release strategies in markets where theatrical distribution remained culturally significant and where partnerships with local distributors could generate goodwill and additional publicity. Australia, as the country where the film was produced and where Patrick Hughes had his professional roots, was a natural candidate for this approach. The theatrical release also gave the film the opportunity to generate critical coverage from Australian publications ahead of the global Netflix drop-A coverage that could then be incorporated into the film's broader marketing. Home media. War Machine's primary home media release took the form of its global streaming debut on Netflix on March 6, 2026. In the contemporary entertainment landscape, a Netflix streaming release constitutes a home media event in itself. The platform's subscriber base spans over 300 million households globally, and a film that launches as a Netflix original has immediate theoretical access to an audience of a scale that dwarfs any physical home media release in the history of the medium. The March 6 date had been confirmed during Netflix's Next on Netflix 2026 presentation, where the streamer had announced its full film slate for the year, and the date represented the culmination of a marketing campaign that had built anticipation across the preceding months. The streaming release made War Machine available globally in Netflix's standard streaming quality, with the platform's highest quality tier offering 4K UHD with HDR where supported, a presentation format well suited to a film whose visual language had been constructed around the dramatic landscapes of Victoria and New Zealand's South Island. For subscribers watching on compatible hardware, the film's cinematography and visual effects were presented with considerably greater fidelity than any previous generation of home video technology would have permitted. The practical effects and location photography that had defined so much of the production's approach were, in this sense, well served by the streaming format's technical capabilities. Netflix's algorithmic recommendation infrastructure worked in the film's favor from the moment of release, surfacing War Machine prominently to subscribers whose viewing histories suggested interest in action, science fiction, and military-themed content. The film's trailer and promotional materials had already been circulated extensively through social media and Netflix's own promotional channels in the weeks preceding the launch, ensuring that awareness was high at the moment availability was announced. Alan Richson's strong existing fanbase from the Reacher series on Amazon Prime Video represented a pre-built audience of considerable size that could be expected to migrate platforms to see him in new material, and Netflix's promotion of War Machine targeted that audience directly. While a traditional physical media release on Blu-ray and DVD had not been announced as of early March 2026, the absence of such an announcement was consistent with Netflix's broader practice of foregoing physical media releases for its original content. The company's business model had long been oriented around streaming exclusivity, and War Machine was not structured as a film that would seek theatrical and home video revenue through the traditional distribution pipeline. Whether a physical release would eventually emerge perhaps in select international markets where physical media retains stronger commercial relevance remained an open question in the immediate aftermath of the streaming launch. Reception box office. The box office performance of War Machine was, by the standards of any conventional theatrical metric, negligible. The film grossed $29,156 in total worldwide theatrical revenue. This figure was generated almost entirely during the Australian theatrical window between February 12 and the Netflix global launch on March 6, 2026. And it accurately reflects the extremely limited nature of that theatrical run. War Machine was not designed or structured to compete in the theatrical marketplace, and its modest theatrical gross should be read as entirely consistent with its business model rather than as evidence of commercial failure. The film's true commercial performance must be measured by its streaming numbers, which by any standard were extraordinary. War Machine debuted on Netflix on March 6, 2026 and within 3 days had accumulated 39.3 million views globally, a figure that translated to 71.4 million hours watched worldwide. These numbers placed War Machine as the second biggest Netflix movie opening of 2026 to that point, trailing only The Rip, the Matt Damon and Ben Affleck vehicle that had debuted earlier in the year with 41.6 million views. The relative proximity of those two figures, particularly given that War Machine was a science fiction action film featuring a star whose fame, while considerable, was more recent and narrower in scope than Damon's, underscored the remarkable scale of audience interest the film had generated. As of March 10, 2026, War Machine held the #1 position on Netflix in 92 of the 93 countries tracked by Flixpatrol, a near total global dominance of the platform's charts that represented one of the most comprehensive debut performances in recent Netflix history. In the United States, the film displaced the previous chart topper, reportedly Scarlett Johansson's Jurassic World Rebirth, and did not yield the top position in the days immediately following its debut. The film's performance in geographically and culturally diverse markets, ranging from English-speaking Western countries through Asia-Pacific markets, Latin America, and Europe, suggested that its genre appeal transcended cultural specificity and reached audiences across a wide spectrum of national contexts. Netflix officially ranked War Machine as the most-watched title on the platform during the week of March 2 through March 8, 2026, a weekly ranking that reflected not only the scale of its opening viewership but also its remarkable consistency of performance across the full opening period. This official recognition placed the film among the most successful streaming openings in the platform's history and generated substantial media coverage that further amplified awareness and drove additional viewership in the days following the initial launch. The feedback loop between chart performance, media coverage of that performance, and further viewership is a well-documented phenomenon in streaming culture, and War Machine benefited from it as comprehensively as any film in recent memory. The streaming success prompted immediate speculation about sequel possibilities. War Machine's ending had been deliberately constructed with franchise architecture in mind. Its final act revealed that the extraterrestrial machine encountered during the reindeer training exercise was not an isolated incident but rather one component of a global invasion fleet, with thousands of similar machines now threatening the planet under a coordinated assault that military forces were scrambling to counter under an operation called Global Shield. This ending did not merely suggest a sequel as a commercial afterthought but embedded sequel potential into the narrative fabric of the film itself, leaving the story in a state of productive resolution that invited continuation. The streaming numbers suggested Netflix had strong commercial reasons to exercise that option. Critical response: War Machine received what most observers characterized as generally positive reviews, though the critical consensus was mixed enough to prevent any straightforward characterization of the film as a critical triumph. On the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, 69% of 45 critics' reviews were classified as positive, a figure that placed the film in fresh territory by the platform's threshold but represented a far more equivocal assessment than the enthusiastic audience response might have implied. On Metacritic, which assigns weighted numerical scores derived from critical reviews and uses them to construct a composite evaluation, War Machine received a score of 54 out of 100 based on 11 critics, a figure officially designated as indicating mixed or average reviews. The gap between the critical scores on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, and the even larger gaps between both of those measures and the audience score, which sat at 73% on Rotten Tomatoes popcorn meter, derived from viewer ratings, was itself revealing. It suggested that War Machine was precisely the kind of film that professional critics evaluate by standards, originality, screenplay sophistication, thematic depth, that differ from those applied by general audiences, entertainment value, action quality, pacing, and the pleasure of watching a charismatic lead perform well in a genre the audience already enjoys. The film's defenders and its detractors were, in important respects, not measuring it against the same criteria. The positive critical response clustered around specific elements. Richardson's lead performance was almost universally praised, with critics acknowledging that he carried the film on his considerable physical and emotional presence. Collider's Aidan Kelly offered a representative assessment, describing Richardson's work as a consistently great performance and noting that while the film might not be the breakout actioner that would definitively establish him as a cinematic star of the first order, it remained a fun enough adventure that streaming fans would find genuine enjoyment in. The O review praised the film for wearing its no-nonsense influences openly, describing it as big, loud, occasionally ridiculous, and fully aware of it, a high-volume time killer that neither apologizes for its influences nor attempts to transcend them. Screen Rant's reviewer awarded the film 6 out of 10. Finding merit in the building of tension and several of the early action sequences while expressing reservation about the film's inability to sustain its intensity and visual quality through to the climax. This kind of assessment, acknowledging craft and specific sequences while noting unevenness in the whole, was characteristic of the positive but qualified middle ground that War Machine occupied in critical discussion. The film's first half, with its military training authenticity and its gradual escalation of dread as the alien machine began its assault, was consistently cited as stronger than the more openly spectacular second half, where the genre conventions became more predictable and the screenplay's limitations more apparent. Punch-drunk critics praised what it characterized as the brash, macho nature of the action outing, aligning itself with viewers who responded to War Machine's unapologetic genre commitments as virtues rather than limitations. Screen Rant also noted that the film was the kind of action movie you feel in your body, a formulation that captured something essential about what War Machine was attempting and, in the estimation of sympathetic reviewers, largely achieving. The practical action sequences, the location-based shooting, Golovko's propulsive score, and Kenny's editing combined to produce an experience that operated as much through physical sensation as through narrative engagement. The negative critical responses were anchored by concerns about the screenplay. The Hollywood Reporter's review acknowledged director Patrick Hughes' undeniable skill in staging the viscerally forceful action sequences, noting the relevant experience he had accumulated through The Expendables 3 and The Hitman's Bodyguard, but found the screenplay by Hughes and co-writer James Beaufort seriously wanting. The review characterized the film's R rating as well-deserved given the profusion of burned and dismembered bodies, but offered that despite the competent action direction, the script left much to be desired. Individual lines of dialogue were singled out for their functional clumsiness, the example of "Help me with 7." was cited as sounding less like military urgency than a student pleading for test answers. The most negative review in the critical record came from Region Free, which awarded the film just 1 out of 5 and characterized it as the worst kind of bad movie, a one too dur to generate fun and just competent enough to prevent the kind of inadvertent comedy that can make bad films enjoyable. This assessment placed War Machine in the unenviable critical category of the film that fails in both directions. Neither good enough to be praised on its own terms nor bad enough to be entertaining as camp. While this was a minority position in the overall critical discourse, its very existence in the record illustrated the range of responses the film provoked. The film attracted attention from notable cultural figures beyond the professional critical establishment. Hideo Kojima, the acclaimed Japanese video game creator behind the Metal Gear Solid series and Death Stranding, games whose thematic and aesthetic concerns include military technology, trauma, and existential threat, publicly compared War Machine to a blend of John McTiernan's Predator and his own Metal Gear games. The comparison was not only flattering but analytically perceptive. The Metal Gear franchise's blend of military realism, science fiction extrapolation, and operatic action spectacle shares significant DNA with what War Machine was attempting. Kojima's engagement with the film generated substantial discussion on social media and in gaming and film culture circles, positioning War Machine as an artifact worthy of consideration beyond the narrower conversation about its merits as streaming entertainment. Critics who engaged sympathetically with the film consistently noted that its most significant achievement was its confident deployment of genre conventions without ironic distance or self-conscious deconstruction. In an era when genre filmmaking frequently signals its own awareness of its tropes as a way of preempting criticism, War Machine's willingness to engage with its Predator-esque premise earnestly and energetically, to take seriously the proposition that soldiers in the Australian wilderness facing an extraterrestrial killing machine is a story worth telling with genuine investment, was experienced by sympathetic viewers as both refreshing and effective. Whether that quality constituted artistic virtue or simply competent populism was a judgment that split critics and audiences along familiar lines. The comparison to Predator was so consistent across critical and audience discussion that it functioned as a kind of shorthand for the film's entire value proposition. War Machine was offering the same basic experience as the 1987 McTiernan film, elite soldiers stripped of their technological superiority, forced to confront an adversary whose capabilities and motivations remain opaque, driven to improvise survival strategies in hostile wilderness environments, updated with contemporary production values, a contemporary lead, and a contemporary understanding of military culture. Critics who found this insufficient criticized the film for its familiarity and derivative premise. Critics who found it sufficient praised it for its entertainment value and craft. Following the film's release, director Hughes and star Richardson both discussed the possibility and planning of future installments. Richardson stated in an interview with Screen Rant that substantial sequel material had already been developed, describing the potential follow-up informally referred to as War Machines as having been fully mapped out. He characterized what he knew of the sequel concept with evident enthusiasm. Hughes confirmed that he had conceived the larger narrative arc for the character of 81 while writing the first film, noting that he had sketched out where the story would go if sequels were approved. Hughes also described his affection for the character and his readiness to continue if given the opportunity. As of March 10, 2026, Netflix had not issued an official green light for any sequel, but the streaming numbers, 39.3 million views in 3 days, the number one position in 92 countries, gave the platform substantial commercial incentive to move forward with one. The audience response had spoken with unusual clarity, and the filmmakers had demonstrated sufficient creative investment in the world they had built to suggest that a sequel, should it materialize, would arrive with genuine creative intent rather than as a purely commercial exercise. The overall cultural footprint of War Machine in its first week of release was striking. A film that began as a passion project conceived in Australia in 2021, developed quietly through the subsequent years, and shot across Victoria and New Zealand's South Island in a compressed 13-week schedule had, within days of its global streaming debut, become one of the most watched pieces of content on the planet's largest entertainment platform. It occupied chart positions across 92 countries, generated commentary from acclaimed creative figures in adjacent industries, sparked immediate sequel discussions, and positioned its lead actor as one of the most bankable streaming stars of the current period. Whether its place in cultural memory would prove lasting or ephemerally, whether it would be remembered as a genuine contribution to genre cinema or simply as a popular streaming title that had its moment, remained a question for time to answer. What was not in question was the magnitude of its immediate impact on the audiences who had chosen to spend their streaming time with a platoon of U.S. Army Ranger recruits embark on a field exercise as the final part of their training, only to stumble across the vanguard of an alien invasion. Netflix already has a war machine, specifically David Michôd's 2017 satirical comedy, lampooning the absurdity of warfare. This latest claimant to the title, however, is an absurd warfare movie, one that's certainly comedic, if not always intentionally referred to only by the number bestowed upon him by the military. Walking Meat Mountain Alan Ritchson is A81, a prospective U.S. Army Ranger who signs up for the elite infantry force as a tribute to his deceased brother, a swiftly fragged Jai Courtney, who never makes it out of the prologue. Once enlisted, 81 is subjected to all the trials and degradations the Army can muster, here deployed for the sole purpose of demonstrating just how hurrah hardcore our numerical hero truly is. Surly, solitary and stewing in PTSD, 81 sprints up hills while others jog, flattens the competition in hand-to-hand, then quite literally drowns himself at the bottom of a swimming pool to prove that air is for the weak. It's all about as subtle as a bayonet to the ghoulies, but if the message still isn't clear, he has DFQ helpfully tattooed down one forearm in huge letters. Don't fucking quit. The first act follows fairly standard boot camp beats, while making us peripherally aware of news broadcasts detailing a mysterious space rock that will soon pass close to Earth's orbit, Chekhov's asteroid, if you will. That nugget of information proves especially pertinent when the recruits are sent into the field for their final test, only to stray into the path of a bipedal alien death machine, hell-bent on their annihilation. Alan Ritchson, who stars as Jack Reacher, will star in Netflix's sci-fi action thriller War Machine, which is set to release on March 6, 2026. War Machine is an upcoming sci-fi action film directed and co-written by Patrick Hughes. James Beaufort, Machine, co-wrote the screenplay alongside Hughes. Valerie Bleth-Sharp, Westworld, is the executive producer. Patrick Hughes and Greg McLean are producers for Huge Film. Alexander Young and Todd Lieberman are producers for Hidden Pictures, and Rich Cook produces for Range. Most notably, the film's lead is Alan Ritchson, whose popularity has surged in recent years thanks to his role as Jack Reacher in Amazon Prime Video's television adaptation of Lee Child's beloved book series. Ritchson is joined by a great cast, which includes Dennis Quaid, Stephan James, Jai Courtney, Asa Morales, Blake Richardson, Kenan Lonsdale, and Daniel Weber. The official logline for War Machine is, during the final stage of U.S. Army Ranger selection, an elite team's training exercise turns into a fight for survival against an unimaginable threat. When is War Machine coming to Netflix? War Machine is just over 2 months away from release. In its announcement of the 2026 movie slate, Netflix confirmed that War Machine will be released worldwide on March 6, 2026. You can find all of today's announcements for Netflix's 2026 movie slate in our overall preview here. Are you excited for the release of War Machine on Netflix in March 2026? Let us know in the comments below. War Machine, a new sci-fi action film starring Alan Ritchson, was the most watched title on Netflix during the week of March 2 to 8, debuting with 39.3 million views in 3 days. Season 4 of Bridgerton was the second most watched title overall and, for the second week in a row, the most watched on the TV chart, hitting 13.1 million views in the first full week of availability for Part 2. The season debuted at number 1 with 4 episodes in January, then returned to number 1 with 28 million views last week with the release of its final 4 episodes. Season 1 of Bridgerton also continued its resurgence, taking the number 8 position with 2.2 million views. Docuseries The Dinosaurs came behind Bridgerton, debuting at number 2 with a strong 10.4 million views in 3 days. With 5.2 million views, The Night Agent Season 3 took third place in its third week on the chart and was followed by the debut of Vladimir, which reached 4.2 million views in 4 days. With 3 million views or less, the rest of the English-language TV chart featured Season 8 of Formula 1, Drive to Survive, the March 2nd edition of Raw, 2026, Gabby's Dollhouse Season 13, The Mentalist and Love is Blind, Ohio. See the Netflix Top 10 for March 2nd below, beginning with English-language movies and TV and followed by non-English language movies and TV. War Machine, 2026, A Review. War Machine follows a haunted U.S. Army veteran, Alan Richson, known only as 81, who is still reeling from the death of his younger brother during a deployment in Afghanistan. 2 years after failing to save him, 81 channels his guilt into the brutal Ranger assessment and selection program, pushing his injured body and fractured mind far past the breaking point in hopes of earning a place in an elite unit. His commanders question his stability but ultimately assign him to lead a final training mission, a 24-hour simulation that is supposed to test endurance, teamwork, and leadership under controlled conditions. For 81, it is one last chance to prove he is more than the man who couldn't carry his brother to safety. The exercise sends 81 and a squad of exhausted candidates deep into rugged terrain to locate and neutralize a mysterious classified aircraft before its tech can fall into enemy hands. Armed only with blank rounds and treated as expendable by design, the trainees expect staged ambushes by instructors, not real combat. When they discover a strange-looking piece of machinery slightly off of the coordinates they were given for the downed plane, they assume it is part of their test. Thinking it is some newfangled tech craft, they proceed to wire it with explosives to blow it up. 81 sees something a little further down the trail and goes to investigate. As he comes across the real downed plane, 81 realizes the other craft they are about to blow up is not part of the test. He sprints back to stop them, but he's too late. They hit the detonator, and their mission and the notion of a controlled simulation collapses in an instant. The object roars to life, transforming into a war machine, cutting through the squad, severing communications, and turning the training op into a kill box. Trapped, disoriented, and cut off from command, 81 and the remaining candidates are forced to improvise, scavenging real weapons and using the terrain itself as they're hunted across the mountainside. Australian actor Jai Courtney, who played the maniacal Bruce Tucker in Dangerous Animals, appears briefly but memorably as 81's younger brother in the beginning scene in Afghanistan, and his easy rapport with Richson makes you wish he stuck around longer. Dennis Quaid and Esai Morales lean hard into grizzled Army Ranger energy as the commanders overseeing the selection course, barking orders and radiating old-school, regulation-obsessed authority from the safety of the command tent. But this is Alan Richson's movie. He shoulders the physical and emotional load, selling 81 as a man who'd rather break his body than live with another failure. And once the war machine is unleashed, his bruised, determined presence is what keeps the film locked onto its desperate, boots-on-the-ground survival mode. Patrick Hughes, an Australian action filmmaker, wrote, directed and produced War Machine for Netflix. His previous directing work includes The Expendables 3, 2014, The Hitman's Bodyguard, 2017, and Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, 2021. There are shades of Predator, War of the Worlds, and even a little Terminator and Transformers baked onto War Machine's DNA, but it still manages to feel like its own beast thanks to Alan Richson's bruising, grounded performance. This isn't sleek, glossy sci-fi, it's mud, blood, and brute force survival with the squad that goes from cocky to terrified in record time. And you are right there beside them every terrifying step of the way. Highly recommended sci-fi thrill ride. War Machine on Netflix is a sci-fi action movie that manages to surprise in a few ways, mostly through its characters, who are allowed to be vulnerable and traumatized, which is known to be the case for many veterans. Overall, it's predictable but also very entertaining. As a bonus, the enemy is literally out of this world. Read our full War Machine movie review here. War Machine is a Netflix action thriller with a sci-fi plot. In many ways, it delivers everything you would expect, which is good, especially if you just want to be entertained on a Friday night. Fortunately, for anyone wanting something a little deeper, it also allows for its heroes to have struggles. They deal with trauma and physical injuries, as one would expect, but these are rarely a plot element. The runtime is 1 hour and 46 minutes, which I expected would be too long. Surprisingly, it isn't. Mostly because the first half hour is used to introduce the characters. It's only after this that the sci-fi element becomes a key plot driver. And sure, you will virtually be able to say the lines ahead of the characters in several instances, but this predictability ensures a more comfortable entertainment. War Machine is a perfect movie if what you're looking for in a movie is buff guys fighting an unstoppable killer alien across some far-flung, unforgiving terrain. Director Patrick Hughes delivers Netflix a modern interpretation of Predator with a few notable changes. For one thing, instead of an entire cast of recognizable beefcakes, War Machine star Alan Ritchson carries the movie on his back, while everyone else is mostly disposable. For another, we never actually see what the aliens look like in this movie. The only on-screen enemy is a robotic, weaponized spaceship. But there's one more potential difference between War Machine and Predator that I hope to see play out. Unlike the 1980s classic that inspired it, War Machine should never get a sequel. There's a lot going against this argument. Not only is War Machine already a huge hit for Netflix, which needs its own franchises now more than ever, but Hughes very clearly and deliberately sets up his sequel. "I know exactly where it's going," the director told Screen Rant in a recent interview. "War Machines is gonna be sick," Richardson added, referencing the Alien sequel, another franchise that clearly inspired this movie. And yet, while War Machines, or War Machine 2, may seem inevitable, there's no way to turn this modern sci-fi action classic into a franchise without undermining what makes War Machine so great in the first place. War Machine, 2026, is a sci-fi action movie that tries to mix military survival drama with alien machine action. The story follows a group of U.S. Army Ranger trainees whose training mission turns into a deadly fight against a mysterious mechanical enemy. Movie details. Full review. Honest review. A War Machine, 2026. War Machine, 2026, is a sci-fi action movie that tries to mix military survival drama with alien machine action. The story follows a group of U.S. Army Ranger trainees whose training mission turns into a deadly fight against a mysterious mechanical enemy. The film stars Alan Ritchson as the tough soldier known as 81, alongside Dennis Quaid and Jai Courtney. It premiered on Netflix on March 6, 2026. What's good? The movie's biggest strength is its action and visuals. The combat scenes are intense, with explosions, gunfights, and a constant survival vibe that keeps the pace moving. Alan Ritchson fits the role of a tough military leader well and brings physical presence to the film. The movie also has decent production quality for a streaming release, with solid effects and a dark, tense atmosphere. What's not so good? The main problem is the story. The plot feels very familiar and predictable, similar to movies like Predator or other soldiers versus unknown enemy films. The villain, a mysterious machine, is visually interesting but lacks any real explanation or depth, which makes the conflict feel shallow. Some supporting characters are also underused and forgettable. Overall, War Machine isn't a terrible movie, but it's also not very memorable. It works best as a simple action movie you watch once for entertainment, rather than something with deep storytelling or emotional impact. Alan Ritchson's new military sci-fi action movie War Machine is Netflix's second biggest debut of 2026. War Machine debuted at number 1 on Netflix's list of its top 10 English films, garnering 39.3 million views in its first days. That debut is second in 2026 to Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's The Rip, which earned 41.6 million in its debut. War Machine stars Alan Ritchson as a combat engineer, known only as 81, who enrolls in the elite U.S. Army Rangers to fulfill a promise to his brother. When 81 embarks on the final trial of his training program, he and his team are interrupted by an invasion from a giant alien machine intent on destroying them. Critics are mostly enjoying War Machine. The film has an 81% fresh Rotten Tomatoes score and a user rating of 70%. It also attracted the attention of acclaimed video game creator Hideo Kojima, who compared the movie on a blend of Predator and his own Metal Gear games. "Wow, it was quite entertaining," Kojima tweeted after seeing War Machine. "It's basically Predator x Metal Gear, a geek-pleasing film that really evokes the feel of 80s and 90s sci-fi action movies. If you like this kind of thing, you should have a great time with it." Alan Ritchson from Reacher, Jack Reacher, the Outlaw, brings great flavor to the role. Dennis Quaid also appears in it. Imagine opening Netflix and seeing a new action movie pop up with the title War Machine. The name alone sounds heavy. It promises explosions, soldiers, advanced technology, and a battlefield where survival depends on strength and strategy. When viewers first saw the trailer for War Machine, 2026, many of them immediately felt that this movie was trying to bring back the old-school action energy that fans of military science fiction have been missing for years. As soon as the film was released, people across the internet started sharing their opinions. Some viewers called it a thrilling action ride that never lets you breathe. Others said it feels like a mix of classic war films and futuristic technology. And of course, there were also critics who thought the movie relied too much on explosions and not enough on deep storytelling. But one thing almost everyone agreed on was that War Machine definitely delivers spectacle. The film stars Alan Ritchson in the lead role, and many viewers believe his presence is one of the biggest reasons the movie works. Ritchson has built a reputation for playing tough, physically powerful characters, especially after his success in the series Reacher. When audiences saw him step into the world of War Machine, they already expected intensity, discipline, and a commanding screen presence. According to many fans, he delivers exactly that. The story places the audience in a brutal, futuristic conflict where technology has transformed the battlefield. In this world, wars are not only fought by soldiers but also by powerful machines designed for destruction. These machines are fast, intelligent, and terrifying. The idea behind the film is simple but exciting. What happens when humans create weapons so powerful that they begin to control the war itself? Many viewers online said the opening sequence immediately pulled them into the story. The movie begins with a tense military operation that quickly turns into chaos. Explosions, gunfire, and the appearance of advanced combat technology create a moment that feels both thrilling and dangerous. Some fans described the first 10 minutes as pure adrenaline. Another aspect that audiences talked about a lot was the film's visual style. The director, Patrick Hughes, is known for directing high-energy action films like The Hitman's Bodyguard. Many viewers believe his style fits perfectly with a movie like War Machine. The camera moves quickly, the action sequences feel intense, and the explosions look massive. People watching the film often mention that the action scenes feel big and cinematic. Tanks roll across destroyed landscapes. Soldiers move carefully through dangerous territory. And when the war machines appear, the tension instantly increases. Some viewers compared the movie's atmosphere to famous sci-fi war films like Edge of Tomorrow and Terminator 2, Judgment Day. But while many viewers enjoyed the action, others had mixed feelings about the story itself. Some critics said the film focuses more on spectacle than on deep character development. They argued that while the battles look impressive, the emotional connections between characters could have been stronger. According to these reviewers, the movie sometimes feels like a roller coaster that moves so fast it forgets to slow down and explore the human side of war. Still, even many of those critics admitted that the movie is extremely entertaining. Several reviewers said War Machine feels like the kind of film you watch when you want pure action without overthinking the plot. It's the type of movie where you sit back, enjoy the chaos, and let the sound of explosions and gunfire take over your screen. Another performance that viewers discussed online was that of Dennis Quaid. Many fans were excited to see him in a military-themed story again. His character brings experience and authority to the story, and audiences said his scenes often feel powerful because he plays the role of someone who understands the true cost of war. Alongside him, actors like Stephen James and Jai Courtney help create a team dynamic within the military unit shown in the film. Several viewers commented that these characters represent different personalities within a modern army. Some are fearless, some are cautious, and some begin to question the technology they are fighting alongside. One of the most interesting ideas in the film is the concept of technology becoming too powerful. The movie explores the fear that advanced machines could eventually make human soldiers less important. Some viewers appreciated this theme because it reflects real-world discussions about artificial intelligence and automated warfare. Online discussions often focused on this question: if machines become the ultimate weapon, what role do humans still play in war? Some reviewers said this idea adds depth to the movie, even though the film doesn't always explore it fully. The visual effects are another major talking point among viewers. Many people praise the design of the war machines themselves. These machines are not just simple robots. They look complex, heavily armored, and incredibly dangerous. When they move across the battlefield, the sound design makes them feel almost unstoppable. Fans of military science fiction particularly enjoyed these sequences. Some viewers even said the machines reminded them of designs from classic sci-fi films, but updated with modern visual effects. The combination of practical explosions and digital effects creates battles that feel chaotic and realistic. However, not every viewer was completely satisfied. A few critics argued that the movie sometimes relies too heavily on CGI. They felt that certain scenes looked too polished and less realistic. But even among these critics, many still admitted that the action scenes are exciting enough to keep audiences engaged. Another common opinion shared by viewers is that the movie feels like a throwback to the action films of the early 2000s. Instead of focusing heavily on complicated storytelling, War Machine chooses to prioritize energy and momentum. The pace rarely slows down, and the story keeps pushing the characters into bigger and more dangerous situations. Some audiences love this approach because it makes the movie feel straightforward and intense. Others wished there had been more emotional depth and character backstory. This difference in opinion is one of the reasons the film received mixed but generally positive reactions. Music and sound design also played a big role in how viewers experienced the film. The soundtrack often builds tension before a battle begins, and then suddenly explodes into powerful, dramatic sounds during combat scenes. Many viewers said watching the movie with good speakers or headphones makes the experience much more exciting. As the story moves toward its final act, the stakes become even higher. The conflict between humans and machines reaches a dangerous point, and the characters are forced to make difficult decisions. Without giving away spoilers, many viewers said the ending delivers exactly what an action film should: a massive confrontation that pushes both the heroes and the machines to their limits. After watching the film, audiences quickly began debating whether War Machine could become the start of a larger franchise. Some fans believe the world created in the movie has enough potential for sequels or even spin-off stories. The concept of futuristic warfare and powerful machines offers many possibilities for future storytelling. Others believe the movie works best as a standalone action film. They argue that not every movie needs a sequel, and sometimes it's better to let the story end with one big, unforgettable battle. Despite these debates, most viewers seem to agree on one thing: War Machine is designed to entertain. It may not try to reinvent the action genre, but it delivers the kind of intense spectacle that many fans love. Explosions, powerful soldiers, dangerous technology, and high-stakes battles create a movie experience that feels loud, fast, and exciting. For audiences who enjoy military action mixed with science fiction, the film provides exactly what they are looking for. For viewers who prefer deep emotional drama and complex storytelling, the movie might feel a little simple, but even those viewers often admit that the action scenes are impressive enough to keep their attention. In the end, War Machine, 2026, seems to have achieved what it set out to do. It brought together a strong cast, a director known for explosive action, and a futuristic war concept that sparks curiosity and excitement. The result is a film that many viewers describe as a fun and energetic ride through a battlefield where technology and humanity collide. And perhaps that is the real reason people continue talking about the movie. It taps into a very real question about the future. If technology keeps becoming more powerful, will it protect humanity a broken bar or eventually replace it? That question lingers in the mind long after the final explosion fades and the screen goes dark. Imagine sitting down at night, scrolling through your streaming options, and suddenly a title appears that sounds intense even before you press play. The name itself feels powerful: A War Machine. It promises destruction, soldiers, advanced weapons, and a battlefield where survival depends on courage and strategy. For many viewers, that title alone created curiosity. People expected a massive action spectacle, something loud, thrilling, and filled with futuristic warfare. And when the film finally arrived on screens, audiences immediately began sharing their thoughts about what they had just experienced. From the very beginning, viewers noticed that the movie tries to combine two popular genres: military action and science fiction. That mix has always fascinated audiences. War stories already carry tension and emotion, but when futuristic technology enters the battlefield, the stakes suddenly become much higher. In this film, the world of combat has evolved beyond ordinary soldiers and traditional weapons. Advanced machines now play a major role in warfare, creating a new kind of battlefield where humans and technology must work together or sometimes compete for control. One of the first things audiences discussed online was the performance of the lead actor, Alan Ritchson. Many viewers already recognized him from the action series Reacher, where he built a reputation for playing tough, disciplined characters. In War Machine, he steps into a similar role as someone strong, determined, and capable of leading soldiers through dangerous missions. Fans said his physical presence alone adds intensity to the film. When he appears on screen, he looks like someone who truly belongs on a battlefield. Audiences often said that Ritchson brings a sense of seriousness to the story. His character doesn't feel like a superhero. Instead, he feels like a soldier who understands the risks of war. This grounded approach helped many viewers stay emotionally connected to the story, even when the action scenes became extremely explosive and dramatic. Another actor who caught the attention of viewers was Dennis Quaid. His role brings experience and authority to the film. Many fans were excited to see him in a military-style story again because he has played strong characters throughout his career. In War Machine, his character represents leadership and wisdom. While younger soldiers rush into battle with adrenaline and determination, his character often reflects the deeper consequences of war. Some reviewers said these moments gave the film a small but important emotional layer. Behind the camera, the movie is directed by Patrick Hughes, who is known for creating fast-paced action films. He previously directed movies like The Hitman's Bodyguard, which means he understands how to keep audiences entertained with high energy and explosive moments. Many viewers said his style is clearly visible throughout War Machine. The camera moves quickly, battles feel chaotic, and the action sequences rarely slow down. For fans of action movies, this approach was exciting. Some viewers even described the film as a non-stop adrenaline ride. They said the director wastes no time in bringing audiences directly into the conflict. Within the opening scenes, viewers are already witnessing soldiers preparing for a dangerous mission. Tension builds quickly, and then suddenly the battlefield erupts with gunfire and explosions. One thing that impressed many viewers was the scale of the action. War machines appear on screen as powerful mechanical weapons designed for destruction. These machines are heavily armored, fast, and incredibly dangerous. When they enter the battlefield, everything changes. Soldiers who once relied only on human strength now have to deal with technology that can overpower them in seconds. Some audiences compared the film's concept to famous science fiction action movies like Edge of Tomorrow and Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Those films also explored the relationships between humans and advanced technology during war. While War Machine has its own story, the atmosphere reminded many viewers of those classics. The visual effects were another major topic of discussion among fans. Modern action films often depend heavily on computer-generated imagery, and War Machine is no exception. The War Machines themselves look detailed and intimidating. Their design combines military hardware with futuristic robotics, creating weapons that feel believable but still slightly terrifying. When these machines move across the battlefield, viewers can hear the heavy mechanical sounds of their steps and weapons. The sound design helps make them feel massive and unstoppable. Many fans said watching the movie with good speakers or headphones makes the experience even more intense. However, not every viewer felt the same way about the film's heavy reliance on visual effects. Some critics argued that certain scenes looked too polished or artificial. They believe the movie sometimes focused too much on visual spectacle instead of emotional storytelling. According to these critics, the action is exciting, but the characters could have been developed more deeply. Despite these criticisms, many audiences still found the movie extremely entertaining. For them, the purpose of an action film is simply to deliver excitement and spectacle. They said War Machine succeeds because it understands exactly what kind of experience it wants to provide. Instead of slowing down the story with complicated dialogue, it keeps pushing the characters toward bigger and more intense battles. The supporting cast also received attention from viewers. Actors like Stephen James and Jai Courtney play soldiers who fight alongside the main character. Their roles help create the feeling of a military team where each person has a different personality and attitude toward the mission. Some soldiers appear fearless and confident, charging into battle without hesitation. Others begin to question whether the powerful machines they rely on might eventually become uncontrollable. This tension between trust and fear adds an interesting layer to the story. It reflects a real-world concern about how far technology should go in modern warfare. Many viewers appreciated this theme because it connects the movie to real discussions about artificial intelligence and automated weapons. Around the world, scientists and governments are debating how advanced technology should be used in military situations. War Machine brings that idea into an action-packed fictional world, asking an important question: if machines become the most powerful weapon, what role will human soldiers play in the future? Another element audiences enjoyed was the pacing of the story. The film rarely pauses for long periods of calm. Instead, it moves quickly from one mission to another. Just when viewers think the characters have survived the worst danger, a new threat appears. This constant momentum keeps the audience engaged and curious about what will happen next. Music also plays an important role in creating tension. During quieter moments, the soundtrack slowly builds suspense. Then, as battles begin, powerful music and sound effects explode through the speakers. Many viewers said this combination of music, gunfire, and mechanical sounds makes the action sequences feel larger than life. As the story approaches its final act, the conflict between humans and machines reaches its peak. The characters must face the possibility that the technology designed to help them might actually become their greatest enemy. This realization creates some of the most dramatic moments in the film. Without revealing spoilers, the final battle is exactly what fans of action movies expect. It is large, chaotic, and visually impressive. Soldiers fight desperately while massive machines unleash devastating power across the battlefield. The tension continues building until the very last moments, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats. After the film ended, many audiences went online to discuss whether War Machine could become part of a larger franchise. Some fans believe the concept has huge potential for sequels. The world of futuristic warfare shown in the movie could easily expand into more stories about technology, soldiers, and global conflict. Others believe the film works perfectly as a standalone action adventure. They argue that sometimes a single explosive story is enough, and not every movie needs multiple sequels. Regardless of whether the story continues, most viewers agree that the film delivers a memorable action experience. What makes War Machine interesting is that it doesn't try to reinvent the action genre completely. Instead, it focuses on delivering the elements that audiences already love via strong heroes, dangerous enemies, massive explosions, and high-stakes battles. By combining those elements with futuristic technology, the film creates a world that feels both familiar and new. For fans of military science fiction, the movie offers exactly what they want: intense combat, powerful machines, and a story that explores the future of warfare. For viewers who prefer deep emotional drama and complex character studies, the film might feel slightly simple, but even those viewers often admit that the action scenes are impressive and exciting. In the end, War Machine, 2026, became a film that sparked conversation among audiences. Some people praised its thrilling action and strong performances, while others wished the story had explored its ideas more deeply. Yet almost everyone agreed on one point: that the movie is designed to entertain. And sometimes that is exactly what viewers are looking for. After a long day, many people simply want to sit down, watch an intense story unfold, and experience the excitement of a cinematic battlefield where heroes must fight impossible odds. War Machine delivers that experience. It throws viewers into a world where the line between human strength and technological power is slowly disappearing. Soldiers must adapt, machines continue evolving, and the future of warfare becomes more uncertain with every battle. By the time the final scene fades and the screen goes dark, audiences are left thinking about the same question that runs quietly through the entire film: if humanity keeps building more powerful machines, will those creations always remain under our control, a broken bar, or will they eventually become the true rulers of the battlefield? That question lingers long after the explosions end, making War Machine not just an action spectacle, but also a glimpse into a possible future where technology and humanity must decide whether they will fight together or against each other. Thanks for watching.